Good morning, everybody. All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Olivia Wami, and today we're going to be looking at a very interesting topic: resource planning in project management. So let's. Hello. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Olivia. Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that. My system keeps going blank. Just it's kind of shaky. I don't know why. So let me just start quickly. So first, let's just look at what resource planning is for project managers and non-project managers. I'm sure you've been stuck in a sort of a situation where you require maybe specific specialists, but they aren't available, and or you need like a physical location that was supposed to be reserved for about 6 months or more.
Um,
Sorry.
sorry, can I ask, like, when last did you shut down your system?
Oh, yesterday.
Okay, I was asking because maybe a shutdown could fix the issue. I don't know what's wrong with it. But have you occurred before?
Okay, I think it's much better now. It's much better now, so I can just. I'm sorry about that. Really.
It's still blank from my end. I don't know.
Okay, let me just share my screen.
Okay.
All right. Please confirm you can see my screen.
Yeah, I can see your screen now.
I can see it now.
Okay. So, have you ever had like your project team members sit on their hands waiting for a dependent task to finish before they can begin their parts? All of these situations can be incredibly stressful for a project manager and put a lot of strain on a company's operation. I know I've been there before. Um, So this can actually be taken care of using what we call resource planning in project management. So for today's course, I'm going to be running through what you can see on my screen. I'll be so fast so that we can actually won't waste much time today. So first of all, what is resource planning? Resource planning is simply the process of determining how a business will allocate resources in a project, such as assigning tasks to individuals based on their skills and availability. So project managers utilize resource planning to make sure they are getting the most out of their resources and team members. They also utilize it to estimate future needs in order to ensure that they have enough employees, space, and items on hand when they are needed. So you can see like we have something beside my screen that is like displaying. Okay, you can see like a funny cartoon. Maybe we should have built the roof first, or are we ready to push in the furniture, something like that. So it's obviously stating that there was actually no planning whatsoever for what that display is, or the image you're seeing on my screen. So companies should invest in effective resource management because it brings various benefits, including cost savings, time savings, and enhanced customer satisfaction. So these three things mentioned are like the bedrock of project success. So there needs to be like a cost saving, the time needs to be saved, and most importantly, there should be customer satisfaction. So what is resource planning in project management per se? So in project management, resource planning is an important and recurrent phase throughout the planning execution stage of the process. It is a proactive section or a proactive action that anticipates the project's demand and ensures that necessary people, tools, resources, and funding are accessible when the project requires them, allowing the project to proceed as planned. So in for today, I just want to show you guys why most of the things that happen during projects actually happen. So because of resource planning, you're able to anticipate where you need people or resources at a particular stage of of any project. So because they are intimately familiar with the project requirements and the project plan, project managers are typically in charge of resource planning for their projects. So by planning ahead, project managers can prepare for each step in the project and minimize unnecessary delays and unpleasant surprises. So for most of us that have been having continuous delays, continuous time refrain or whatsoever that you are having during your project, I'm very sure that if you implement resource planning into your project, you'll be able to tackle those issues. So the resource management plan, which is a document or tool that explains how an organization will deploy resources during a project, is an important part of good resource planning. So if you decide to go into resource planning, you will need a resource so a document that's called a document or tool that is called resource management plan. Now these days we have software that take care of resource planning, so you don't actually need to use and necessarily use an Excel sheet or depend on an Excel sheet to make your resource plan. So all team members should have access to the resource management plan, which should be updated throughout the project. It should be the one source of truth for what resources have been deployed at this point in the project development and what resources will be required in the future, allowing project managers to make educated decisions. So when you have a, let's say for example, when you have a project where you're not just working with developers, you're working with developers and let's say graphic designers. So in this resource management plan, it actually delegates who needs to work on what at what point and who is in charge of what section of the project. So what is often included in a resource management plan? So we have the resources, the cost, the availability, responsibilities, and dependencies. These five things are the key things that makes up a resource management plan. First, you have to know your available resources for a project forms the foundation for your plan. And you also need to keep track of both the direct costs or resources, direct cost of resources to the organization and the bill rate, which is the cost to the client. To avoid delay or resource conflict, it's critical to know when each resource is available. Some of us have actually worked with persons that are actually handling more than one project at a time. So in that instance, project managers need to make sure that the persons that they are assigning to their projects are available. If they are not available at the same at let's say at a specific time, they can also communicate with the project manager that the developer or the person or the resource is working with. Let me give you an instance. So we have John, who is working on a project to let's say develop a software, and then he's also working on a web development project. So John is supposed to have like a meeting every Monday by 9 a.m. to go over what he intends to do for that week, and then everybody is going back to the drawing board to see how they can mitigate risks, they can meet up with the deadline. And those John actually has two meetings at that same time. The best thing to do is not for is not for John to say, okay, I have this meeting, I have this meeting. The project managers who are in charge of both projects are supposed to come together to discuss what time would be best for each of them to have a meeting with John, and so as to avoid conflict and to avoid strain on availability. So you're assigning duties after you have identified the resources you need. You need that you need to make sure that everyone on the team knows what is expected of them, and the relationship between resources is referred to as dependencies. There will be periods when certain resources are unavailable or won't function until certain tasks are done. So it's important to plan for these situations because dependencies can easily derail an entire project. I would say from experience that there have been a lot dependencies are something that comes up a lot of times. So one task may depend on the other. You need to make sure that while you're while you're planning for your project, you put that into consideration. What needs to happen first before this other task takes place? Let me use, for example, a project I'm currently working on. So we have that there needs to be like a booking system or a configuration of a module called booking system for Odoo. So before that takes place, after that takes place, you need to be able to do an inventory configuration. So the inventory configuration cannot happen without the booking system working properly and how it should. So that's just an example of what a dependency is. So this is an example of a resource plan template. You can see these are the resources on the left hand side of my screen. You can see the project name, the project manager, the clients, and the client's name basically, and then the date. So this is how a resource plan should look like. This is just an Excel sheet, but like I said before, you do not just need an Excel sheet during this time and era of technology to make a resource plan template. So why is resource planning necessary? Why do you need that? Why do you actually need to think about doing a resource plan? So resource planning is one of the most important aspects of project management that helps ensures a project success. So using a resource management plan, project managers can manage the delicate balance of demand and capacity. The plan provides a comprehensive overview of everything that is needed and available. So when organizations invest time in planning ahead, they can prevent potential failures along the way. I can say for sure that a horrible plan makes a horrible project. So project managers often oversee multiple projects at the same time, which usually requires using resource management software. So resource planning tool provides the infrastructure so that team members can focus on the details. So if you're planning on undertaking a project, or you're working on one and you don't have a resource plan, I would advise that you do that. Try to come up with a resource plan so as to enable your project to move smoothly. So next we have benefits of resource planning. So what are the benefits of using a resource plan? Cost saving, time saving, customer service optimization, and team improvement. Like I said earlier, the three things I just mentioned are like the bedrock, or the bedrock of what the whole thing I'm talking about, what resource planning is about. We need you're trying to save costs, you're trying to save time, and you're also making sure that you have like customer satisfaction. So resource planning aids resource allocation so that tasks are assigned effectively at the appropriate time. So resource planning also allows you to keep track of your project efficiency. It might assist you in identifying staff who are more productive at specific jobs than others. So if you're working with let's say 5 people at once, and yeah, 5 people are actually a lot, or let's say 20 persons at once on a project. So a resource plan helps you really know the efficiency of each person, who is working, who is not working, who is the one that is like delaying, which person is not really putting in their all to make sure that the project is going to be finished and closed on time. So project managers can see all the details in one place by using a single handy tracking system. which cuts down on the time it takes to oversee projects. The tracking system in question is a resource planning software, not a tracker. So by investing in resource planning, you gain knowledge about all the components of a client's project. Because you have first-hand knowledge of all the intricacies, this level of organization helps customers trust you more. And you also improve your team. There's like team improvement. You can build stronger teams that operate effectively together when all employees are in loop and understand expectations. Employees are empowered to take responsibility of their roles in a project when they use resource planning to avoid miscommunication. So there is an increase in, everybody, you grow like a bond. You and your team has like a strong bond because everybody is in loop. You know what needs to be done. You know what is happening. If there is like an issue, everybody is aware. Everybody is tackling it. That actually brings a sort of responsibility. Everybody takes ownership. Everybody knows that they are responsible for the failure or success of the project. So future planning and greater adaptability. So companies can plan projects can plan projects far in advance thanks to reports or to resource planning. So since they know what resources are available and what demand is expected. So the future planning, most of the time I would say it happens when you're undertaking a project that is similar to maybe something that you want to do currently. So you already know everything that needs to happen. You already have like a resource plan. You can say, okay, this will be like a default resource plan I have, and you can just set everything up and everything is in motion. So in a well-organized strategy, project resource management connects roles to needs. Companies still want to assign the best individual to a project, but project planning allows project managers to fill in for someone who isn't available. So if an employee is working on a project, leaves the organization, the project manager can easily replace them. So that's one another important thing of using a resource planning tool or considering resource planning. You know that there are times when you're working on a project and somebody is leaving in like a month. That would actually bring a form of hitch along the way of your project. But if you're already planning that, you're putting that into perspective that in a month time this is what is going to happen, there's going to be a smooth transition that will avoid whatever delays and hitch that you can have along the way. So what do you avoid in resource planning? Resource planning is a crucial part of project
Olivia.
management. Yes.
Okay, no problem.
Simply
Just
creating a
try to, yeah, okay.
Oh, okay. So, what do you need to avoid? Not understanding your requirements, not holding teams to commitments, not restricting scope creep, and failure to follow up on results. So, since I'm a bit ahead of time, you can just see ask me questions wherever you need. So, these are some examples of some tools that we have, some resource planning tools you can use. These are some softwares that you can use for your resource planning. There are a lot of them, but these are the few I just put down because I have experience with those and they work for me. So capacity planning, demand forecasting, and accountability are the most crucial aspects of a resource planning strategy. In project management, companies utilize resource planning to assign and track resources throughout the project lifecycle. So you can actually do this. By doing this, you can adapt to changes with a resource management plan, which results in a more positive outcome. So this brings me to the end of my presentation today. Sorry, I didn't actually have time to go over it, but I hope you enjoyed. If you have more questions, please let me know. I would be happy to answer you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Olivia. Um, that was the awesome presentation. I really enjoyed it. Because of our time, we would skip the question and answer part till after Samuel has presented. So Samuel, you can proceed. Someone, you are muted. If you can hear me, you can just unmute and acknowledge that you can hear me. Okay.
Okay. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can hear you, and your screen is up. You can see your screen too.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. So, good morning, everyone. Today, I'm talking about the domain name server. My name is Samuel. So, we're talking about domain name server. In this presentation, defining related terms, and we're going to be explaining what a domain name server is, how we work, types of DNS server. We're going to be contrasting the DNS book of values, DNS resolver, then the questions. Okay. So to understand the presentation, you need to understand some certain terms, which are IP address, server, and domain name server. Okay. So basically DNS. So when you hear me call DNS, I'm also talking about domain name server. Is the short form of domain name server. So what's an IP address? An IP address is a unique string of characters that defines each computer using the Internet Protocol to communicate over a network. I'm sure you've heard about IP address before. So they are a way the network uses to identify a computer. Now we know that the Internet is a network of computers, right? It's just like an address of a house. So if I want to go to your house, I need to know your address. So if the computer A and computer B wants to transfer information, the computer A wants to transfer information to computer B, data to computer B, it has to know the address of computer B, which is the IP address. So there are 32-bit numbers that are used to represent a, the address of a computer, because a server. Now, a server is a computer program or a device that provides service to another computer program and its user. Now, majorly, the server is not even the computer. The server is a program on a computer. So, for example, your personal laptop or your personal computer can be a server, as long as you've incorporated a server operating system that will run it as a server. So any computer that provides service, for example, your laptop can be, or your personal computer could be your local server. So it's just that it's only within that computer that you can use it. So it becomes a local server. So it provides service to another computer or another service. And technically, we could have different operating users of operating system on a computer. So that's a server. Now, what do we mean by domain name system? Now, so this is a system that connects or turns, it's not like it connects domain names into IP addresses, which process used with the IP. So technically, every machine on every computer that connects on the internet, that communicates on the internet, must use an IP address, and therefore would use a DNS, a domain name server. So we're going to understand what a domain name server is. Now, what is a domain name system? Now, for the human brain cannot understand or find it difficult to process numbers. They find it better and they find it easier to process alphabets and names. So imagine if for every website that I have to connect to, I use I have to use the IP address directly. That would mean that I would have to memorize numbers. You just been, for example, if I wanted to go to www.google.com, I would have to know the IP address and of google.com. And there's also a limitation to that. which I would address later in the presentation. So the domain name system is a way by which the we use alphabets, or we use names to represent IP addresses of a machine or a computer. So instead of using 1.9.2.3 to represent a domain name, I would just use www.google.com. And this domain name server, the responsibility of the system, responsibility for it is that it's supposed to, every time I type in a domain name, for example, is www.facebook.com, www.google.com. So every time I type in www.facebook.com, it will resolve it to the IP address and therefore locate the computer. And there is, once that connection has been made, then data can now be transferred. So the DNS server contains a database of public IP addresses and their corresponding domain names. Now, it's a lot more complicated than what I've just said. There are a lot of things that go into play in making sure that the corresponding domain names in the IP address. I'm going to look at the process in this presentation. Now, every device connected to the internet has a unique IP address that helps to identify it. And so basically, we have two different kinds of IP address. We have the IPv4, which is now has gone out of extinction, or which have been exhausted, and we have IPv6 protocols, which is the new one. So when you see an IP address that has just only numbers, that's the IPv4 IP address. When you see an IP address that has both numbers and characters, that is the IPv6 IP address. So now, TNS servers help us avoid memorization of such long numbers. In IP addresses, as they automatically translate the website names we enter into the browser address this number, so that the servers can load the right web pages. Now, the DNS system, the DNS is a system of records of domain names and IP addresses that allow browsers to find the right IP address that corresponds to a host URL entered into it. Now, the DNS is what translates the domain names to the IP addresses so that the resources can be loaded from the website server. So a more practical way of picturing it is the domain name system is essentially a phone book of the internet. And just like how a phone book matches individuals to a phone number, the DNS matches the website name to their corresponding IP address. Now, how does DNS work? The DNS is responsible for converting the host name, like I said. So what we commonly refer to as the web page name, the website, is what we call the host name. Now, it's responsible of converting it to the IP address of that web page of that host name. Now, so the act of entering that name on your browser, when you type in www.google.com, what you have done is you have performed a DNS query. You have queried the server. So now, and the process of finding the IP address is called DNS resolution. Now, DNS queries can be of three types. We have the recursive query, we have the iterative query, or we have the non-recursive query. So let's talk about the recursive query. So now these are queries where the DNS server has to respond with the requested resource record. If a record cannot be found, the DNS client has to be shown an error message. Now, the iterative query. These are queries for which the DNS client will continue to request a response from multiple DNS servers until the best response is found, or error or timeout occurs. If the DNS server is unable to find a match for the query, to refer the DNS server to authoritative for a lower level of the domain namespace. This referral address is then queried by the DNS client, and this process continues with additional DNS servers. So this says what an iterative query is, that it continues to search for the IP address with multiple DNS servers until it finds it, because that means the domain name is not a TLD domain name. It's not a top level domain. It's not popular, so it sends it to different servers until it finds it. So it's iterative. It continues like that until it's able to locate the IP address. Now we have the non-recursive query. Now, so these are queries for which the are resolved by the DNS. So the reason why it is non-recursive is because the IP address is available either stored by your computer system, that is on the kitchen, or it's available in a closed CDN, a content delivery network. It's available on a server close around you. So it doesn't need to iterate it or make it recursive. So it's already stored in the cache. So this is a non-recursive query. So all these are queries. And query, like we explained, is when you type in the domain name. So it is now beginning. So it now begins to look for um, the IP address. Now, if you notice that in your browser, sometimes when there's no internet or when there's an internet, there's a lag of the internet, you discover that it will tell you that either DNS query took too long, but or unable to resolve DNS, which means that it was not able to find the IP address of that domain that you typed into the computer system. Now, once now, so so we have different type of DNS server. Now, once a DNS query is entered, it passes through a few different servers before solution without any end user interaction. Now, the process I'm about to describe takes less than a second, or depending on your domain name and the server involved, takes a few seconds. Now, when you query, right? When you query a domain name, that is when you, for example, you open your browser and you type www.google.com. When you query it, what happens is that, first of all, the DNS requester is this is a server design specifically to receive queries from client machines. Now, it tracks down the DNS record and makes additional requests to meet the DNS queries from the client. The number of requests can be decreased with DNS caching. Now, DNS caching, like we're saying, is that is your computer is storing DNS record of or lists of IP addresses that and their corresponding domain names on your computer system. So that's why sometimes when you notice if you do you clear your cache or you delete the cookies from your computer system, you discover that it takes longer time to load some certain resource because it now has to process it directly from the server without using the one in your system. So it will use an iterative query. So after that is done, we have what we call the root name server. Now this server does the job of translating human-friendly hostname into computer-friendly IP address. So the root name server is what translates it. So on your domain name, there's a part of it that we call the root. So it takes that in and translates it. Now the roots either .com, .ng. Now we have what we call TLD, which is the next one. We have top-level domain name. Now these are popular domain names. For example, when you have a .com, the computer already knows that it's a .com. It doesn't have to start going step from each server to each server. It just limits or restricts the lookup now to e.com, or e.org, or a country, very popular. For example, we have www.example.com.uk. So it restricts that. Okay, so the TLD name server will take the query from the root server and point it to the authoritative DNS server associated with the query particular domain. Now, what is the authoritative? So in the last step, the authoritative DNS name server will return the IP address back to the DNS request, so the first one, that can relay to the client. Now, this authoritative DNS name server is the one at the bottom of the lookup process that hosts the DNS record. Think of this as the last stop or the final authoritative source of truth in the process. So when it's able to locate the one, so it now locates the server that holds the information, the IP address of that domain. It now responds by returning the information required. Now, so that's what happens when you that's how the DNS work. Now, we're going to be looking at DNS lookup versus DNS resolver. Now, what do you mean by DNS lookup? For example, if you want to find the IP address of a name, there's a way you can do the computer system. Okay, so we're going to do a practical now on that. So how to perform DNS lookup. Now, the process by which a DNS server returns a DNS record is called a DNS lookup. The process by which a DNS server returns a DNS record is called a DNS lookup. Now, it involves the query of the hostname from the web browser to the DNS lookup process on the DNS server and back again. What we explained. Now, the DNS resolver is the server that deals with the first step in the DNS lookup process, and which starts the sequence of steps that end in the URL be translated into the IP address for loading the web pages. So the DNS lookup is a process. The DNS resolver is the first step in the DNS lookup process. Okay. Now, first the user enters the hostname. Query travels from the web browser to the internet and is received by the DNS recursive resolver. The recursive DNS server then queries the DNS root server, which responds with the address to the TLD server responsible for storing the domains. The resolver then makes a DNS request to the corresponding domain's TLD and receives the IP address of the domain name server. As the last step, the recursive DNS server queries the domain name and is returned with the IP address to send to the web browser. It is after the DNS lookup process is done that the browser can request for individual web pages through HTTP requests. So these steps make up a standard DNS lookup process, but they can be shortened with DNS sketching. Now, I've explained DNS sketching. So DNS sketching is when, so instead of going through all these processes, it's just stored on your computer system. So instead of going through from the resolver to the root server to the TLD, before to the authoritative server, you just go straight to your memory, and in case you have that information, it's just able to request whatever data it needs to through the protocol HTTP request. Okay, so let's do a little bit of practical on some popular web or domain names. Let's find the IP address using DNS lookup. Now we're going to be using so we're going to be finding the IP address. Up you can see and looking at the IP address for google.com. So you just type in your command prompt.
Your screen was still on your slide.
Sir? Okay, I'm almost sure. I'm almost sure.
Okay.
You can't see my screen now.
It's showing, but just your slide is showing. You cannot see your brother.
Yeah, yes, you can't see my browser.
Yes, you cannot.
Can you see my screen?
Like, yes, but what we are saying is just your slide. I'm thinking you wanted to show us your brother, right?
Yes, no, it's not your browser. I you see something on my screen now.
Yeah, what is this here is the DNS lookup versus the DNS resolver. Is that what you want to show us?
No, okay, that's why. Okay, let me change the sharing to
yeah.
Okay. So can you see my command line prompts?
Yeah, we can see that now.
Yeah, so I want to perform a DNS lookup on google.com. So when I just type DNS lookup, I type google.com. So it performs the lookup. Now this is the name google.com, and this is the first one up here is an IPv6 IP address. The second one is the IPv4 IP address. So this is a typical DNS lookup. Let's try another popular website. Now, how it's complicated is that DNS changes. It's what we call DHCP. It has a way of changing the IP address for the purpose of making the process faster. So you might not get the same IP address every time you type. So Facebook, right? .com. So you see that it's different from the first one because this is the IP address for Facebook.com right now on my system. So this is the way it's performed. the DNS.
You need to round up because of our
Okay.
time.
All right. Thank you. So I'm basically true. So in summary, we said the domain name system is a server that is specifically used for matching website names. For example, www.google.com with the IP address. We have what types of DNS server. We have the DNS records, root name server, the top level domains server, authoritative server. Yeah, so that's the sort of summary of all, and I showed you how the process of how a DNS query is performed or a DNS lookup is performed. So thank you for watching. Any questions? Thank you for listening rather and watching. Any questions?
Yeah, thank you very much for the brilliant presentation, Samuel. Yeah, today's presentation has been really mind-blowing. Olivia did well. You did well too. Thank you. So quickly, take one question, one for Olivia, one for Samuel. Quickly. If there is none, any question for Olivia or Samuel? Quickly.
Yeah. Can you hear me, please?
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I want to ask, a small, maybe like an SME having like 6 employees, or let's just say 7 employees, will it be okay to employ enterprise resource plan? And my second question is this. Many times we tend to mistake bookkeeping software for enterprise resource software. For example, Sage resource software, and then there's this other one again. We call it NavSuite. That one is a bookkeeping, and they both do. Let me just say almost the same thing. But I want to spot the difference now. That what how will I say it now? How will I ask this question? What is making the enterprise resource plan better than the bookkeeping?
Olivia, please quickly.
Okay, your first question, I think you might need to ask that again. For the second question, the difference between the bookkeeping and what did you ask, and the resource plan, it actually depends on what you're using it for. So bookkeeping is mostly used by accountants and accounting firms, right? But the resource plan is mostly used by project managers. So that's what really differentiates them.
Okay. Michael, please. Michael.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm very sorry for confusion. Yeah, we are behind schedule. We have to leave for stand-ups now. So I appreciate everyone that joined the stand-up. And of course, Michael, you can actually meet her after the section to ask or ask for more clarification. But we have come to the end of today's schedule. So I wish everybody a nice working day. Thank you very much.
All right. Okay. Thank you.